And I have a funny story about Jill Wagner
Oh, good.
and Christmas Wishes. So this was like just a couple of weeks ago. I was out at this tiny, teeny, tiny little bar in Tennessee, and we were watching live music. It was a songwriter was doing his he was playing his songs. And I mean, tiny little bar. And I was standing in the bathroom line because, there's like two little bathrooms in this bar. So there was a little line of ladies waiting, as always. And I was standing next to this girl and I looked at her and and I'm one of those people that's clueless and never notices anybody or recognizes anybody. But I kept looking at her and finally I said, "Is your name Jill?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "You are not going to believe this, but I wrote Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses." And she was like, "What?" And so here we are, the two Christmas Wishes girls standing in the bathroom line at this tiny little bar. And we had this long talk about, because she was like, "I hope I did okay. Did I do it? Did I do okay?" I was like, "Yes, absolutely." It was amazing. So it was pretty crazy that the two of us would be side by side talking about Christmas wishes in the middle of a bar bathroom line. And, she was like, "Oh, go, go, go. It's your turn. Go to the bathroom and then we'll come back and talk."
I want to welcome you to another episode of Media from the Heart. My name is Ruth Hill, and I'm your host. And what a delight to be back here with you. You cannot even imagine. It's been a busy, busy time for me, as I'm sure you realize. That's why you haven't heard from me. But I have a very special episode to bring to you today. This is one I did a while back with an author who I've had the absolute joy and honor of meeting in person. She lives in Nashville. Her name is Jenny Hale. You might know her from Hallmark movies that have been based on her books. And so I would just invite you to sit back, relax, and listen to this incredible podcast episode where I interviewed the vivacious Jenny Hale. I want to welcome you to another episode of Media from the Heart. And my name is Ruth Hill, and I am your host. And again, I have another fabulous, amazing guest. It's always a special time to have these guests, and I have a wonderful virtual audience as well, who I'm sure we'll hear from at some point. But my guest is author, well, she's more than just an author, but we'll say author Jenny Hale. And I've had the joy of knowing her for a while, meeting her in person this past summer. So welcome, Jenny. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For those who may not be familiar with her work, I bet you might know her and you didn't realize it. So let me just read a little bit about her to introduce you. With over 1 million copies of her books sold, Jenny Hale is a USA Today bestselling author of romantic contemporary fiction. Her novels, Coming Home for Christmas and Movie Guide Epiphany Award winner Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses, are Hallmark Channel original movies. Her stories are chock full of feel-good romance and overflowing with warm settings, great friends and families. And as she would say here, grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join the fun. And that's what I would like to invite all of you who are watching and listening to do, because Jenny, you are honestly an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to many people out there, with your books that you've written and the way and your this we'll touch on your publishing company here. We will talk about that for sure. But I first came in contact with you as a result of Coming Home for Christmas.
Yes.
Which was a highly anticipated Hallmark movie. Huge stars. In fact, I just had Neil Bledsoe. I've actually had him twice on the podcast, which is kind of wild. There's a wild story connected. I'm having Andrew Francis come on tomorrow. And so it's kind of interesting. So now you're here. You're the one who wrote that book. Then the movie was based on that book. So that's kind of a cool little tidbit there. But that's how we got connected first. And so for those who may not know your story, just if you, and I know that we've done the interview before where we talked about this, but could you tell us about your journey to becoming an author, just a little bit?
Yes. I did not set out to be an author. I did not, I've never taken a writing class. I was not looking to be an author in any way. I was an elementary school teacher for about 18 years and a district level public school employee and instructor. I taught ESL. I have a reading specialist degree, a master's in ed. And so that was my path. But I was this crazy creative. And I think what happened is I grew up an academic because that's how I was raised. But it took me a while to figure out who I was as a person. And so when I was teaching, I taught 18 years and I was dying for a creative outlet, just dying. And so I read a lot and I thought, I think I can write one of these books. You know, I was reading romantic fiction. I thought, I could write one of these. I just sort of understood the structure of it generally, because I was a little bit of a disaster when I first started, but I generally got it. And so I looked at my husband and I said, I think I'm going to try to write one of these. And he said, well, go for it. He knows me well enough to know that I'm just crazy enough to try it. And so I did it. And it was the first book I wrote was a complete and utter disaster. But once I went back to reading, I started to notice what I'd done wrong. And then it was like this compulsion to do it again and to do it better. And as an educator, the first thing I did is once I figured out there was something I didn't know, I went to Barnes and Noble and bought a book on it. And then I read that. And I kept reading and reading and reading like crazy. And I wrote a second novel. I did it again. So I'm going to try one more time. And that second novel was Coming Home for Christmas, which ended up on Hallmark Channel. And so that was sort of the moment that I thought, hang on a minute, I think I might have something here. And it, you know, like everything, it took a while to learn how to do it and to learn what your readers want to read and how to make it marketable. And it took me about 3 years. I wrote full time and taught school full time. And at the end of that third year, I was in tears by the end of that third year. I was like, both careers were just massive. And I said, I've got to let this go. I've got to let something go. And I knew as a creative that I had to let teaching go. And so I did, I let it go. And then now we're sitting here 20 books later and a publishing company later.
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, your story resonates with me on so many levels now, Jenny. In fact, I think more so now because, of course, I can relate with the whole teaching thing. I mean, I was teaching for however long that was. I get lost somewhere. I know it was like 11 full-time years, and then I was doing all the subbing stuff for all these years, and I know I can now say that my last day in the classroom was the day that everything shut down for the pandemic. And that was my very last day in the classroom. So it's this moment that has such meaning for me now, is to go back and I can remember that day so clearly. And I had no idea when I left that day that I would never be back. And when I say I'm never going back, yeah, I mean, I know they say never, but the chances would be very slim that I would ever be back in the classroom. And but I can totally relate. I was even very involved in creative stuff, but yeah, you feel like you're dying, like when you're talking about like a dying for creativity. Yeah, there's, as much as I'm sure you loved your kids and you loved the classroom and you loved so many aspects of it, it's when you have that desire to get out and do something creatively, it's just like, yeah, you put it into words very, very well. So awesome. So I can relate totally. So, but wow, 3 years of working, teaching full-time and writing full-time. How did you do that, Jenny? How did you even survive those 3 years?
I think, and you know, I'm kind of facing that again, where I'm writing full time and I'm also publishing full time. But I think that what happens is the creative side is not a job.
Mhm.
So it's a drive within me that I can't stop until it's done. And so the teaching was the job,
Mhm.
which, like you said, I love my kids. You know, in fact, I was talking to my friend about writing and how the more I got into it, the more I was like, I think I want to publish, you know, I want to do this myself
Mhm.
and do it my way. And she said, that doesn't surprise me at all because every time you'd get a teacher's manual, you'd look at it and go, I'm just going to do this myself. And and it's because you have that drive. This, you know, I'm looking at their construct and saying, this isn't what fits me or my kids.
Mhm.
And so I think, you know, it's that same idea. So um, it's not really that, oh my gosh, I was doing two jobs. It
Mhm.
was, let me do this job so that I can do the job that I really feel driven to do. And let me fill all my extra hours with that until I can let something go.
Wow. Oh, that's just perfect. That is a perfect description. I'm so glad I asked that. That makes perfect sense, and I'm sure that many of people watching and listening, it's going to resonate with them too. So thank you for that. Thank you. Um, so coming home for Christmas, that is still, in my opinion, a perennial favorite. Like you hear that every year. I don't know how many times that movie must get played every year, but I know during the Christmas season, Hallmark has it on a whole lot. I mean, I don't know how many times I'll turn it on. It's like, oh, there's Coming Home for Christmas again. It's like, there it is again. And then if you add in Christmas in July, plus sometimes they show the Christmas movies throughout the year, depending. And I don't know how that schedule, I haven't kept up with that schedule, but I know they've done that in the past. And so what was that like for you when now you've got the deal, and I know that's when I first interviewed you as a result of that movie. But what was it like when you watched that premiere the first time? What was that experience like?
Oh, that's a great question because there's a funny story behind that. So originally, you know, we were going to go all out. We were going to rent out this bar and have all my friends come and put it on a big screen, and it was going to be so much fun. And we lived in outside of Richmond, Virginia, and I grew up in that area. That's where I was born and raised. And all of a sudden, my husband was transferred to Nashville. And I found myself, I mean, you know, when you make a move like that, you downsize to whatever you just have to take. You get rid of all the old stuff you didn't want, and then you reconfigure your new house because it's a totally different shape, you know, all that good stuff. So we got to Nashville. I didn't have any furniture in my den because we were getting new furniture. I just had a hardwood floor and a television. And my husband's friend from college, actually a mutual friend of ours from college, called us up, and he's a creative in his own right, and he was painting the inside of a bar down on Broadway. And he said, can I stay the night? And I said, yes, you can, but you have to watch Hallmark. And so he showed up, such a trooper, with, you know, I think he had chocolate, beer, pizza, and we all sat in bar stools, barely any bar stools, with no furniture at all, hardly. I might have had a sofa, maybe, but I don't think I did. I can't remember, but I was on the floor watching that movie. And so and it was so classic because it was also the first book I'd ever written. I
Mm.
was still in that stage of where I didn't trust my own instincts creatively. I mean, this was still just an idea that I kept waiting for everybody to figure out. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, you know, and then this comes out, you know, so it was just perfect. But it was such a good, sweet memory of watching that movie for the first time.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that just adds to the whole thing. That just what you described is like, wow, well, that's it's interesting how we will sometimes work to get, like, we're going to get the perfect environment. We're going to have this perfect, amazing moment. And then everything suddenly changes. And it does. And yet it ends up being even more memorable, more fun, more, it becomes that sweet memory. I mean, you were expecting it to go one way, and some people would say, well, you were sitting on the floor watching Coming Home for Christmas, and you weren't doing, and it wasn't on the big screen, you weren't doing all these things. But I could tell you that sometimes, coming from experience, I had the experience of, in December, going to watch the premiere of Christopher Palaha's movie, and it was Christmas movie, and it was in the bar. None of us watched it. It was actually kind of sad. We're in the bar, and I remember, like, the actors are coming in like, aren't we supposed to be watching the movie? It's like, we're not watching the movie. We're all talking to Chris, or we're talking to so maybe your experience, you were able to, because of that, you were able to focus on it a little bit more, because it could have been a little possibly distracting. Who knows? I could just say, trying to watch a Hallmark movie in the bar didn't happen. It's one of the movies I actually still need to go back and watch. So
yes, I totally get it, because even with having a guest in our house, it's still, we talked so much through it that, because I think he didn't even know at that point. He was from college, so I don't even know if he knew that I was a writer, an author. And I think he was like, wait, what? And so he wasn't even aware. So he was asking me all the background to how we got here. So I actually watched it for the first time. The first full time was by myself.
Yeah.
The next go around, like the next day.
Right. That would make more sense. But so that movie, did it stay relatively I mean, I know that the books and movies are always different, but as coming from the writer's standpoint, did you feel that they at least kept the main feel, the main idea of your book? They did it. You were pleased with the product? Is that?
Yes. And I always say, I am more about the creative outlet of it than I am about being specifically tied to my story. In fact, as soon as I write a book, it's like it's downloaded from my head, and then I forget it. I don't remember any of it, and I just start the next one. And so to me, I feel like Hallmark knows their people and they know their audience. And so however they want to change it to fit that group of people, I'm totally into it. I always want to see how they change it. So Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses was changed more than Coming Home for Christmas.
Right.
Coming Home for Christmas was truer to the book.
Right.
And obviously the book has more space and time, so it can go a little deeper. But they just, you can only get so much on the screen in the time that they have. But it was so fun to see the difference. And I also was able to speak with the screenwriter, Nina Weinman, of Coming Home for Christmas while she was doing it. And so I got to read it, and it was just so much fun to see how they took this weird little idea that I had while teaching school and make it into this massive production.
Yeah.
That was more fun than whether or not they kept my story the same.
I really appreciate your perspective on that. I think it's probably the only way that, see, Chad is saying that you're an inspiration, by the way. He just wrote that you are an inspiration. So I had to stop and say that. So that's cool. But I love that you have that perspective, and I'm sure that that's really the only, it's not going to be the only perspective that writers have. I know there are writers that get very frustrated when their books are changed, but I really appreciate the way that you put that. And I love the fact that you say once you've read it, then it's like you're just on to the next one, and it's like you kind of forgotten about it, and so I love that. I think that probably is why you've experienced the success you have. In my opinion, I kind of thinking that there might be something in there. So,
Thank you.
but yes, then you turn around and you have um, Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses, which that was not the name of the book. It was, they changed. Was that the name of the book?
No, that
Oh,
actually
that
was
wasn't. Okay. I
yeah,
wasn't sure.
yeah,
Okay. I couldn't
yeah,
remember
it's
for
the same.
sure. Okay. Okay. I see. I was trying to go on my memory, so my memory failed me at that point.
I at least
Okay.
remember the titles of my books. That might be all I remember from it, but I've got it on the title, so we're
Right.
at least good at that. I couldn't tell you the characters. They did change the character's name, I think. I
Okay.
think the main character's name changed only because they already had. Oh, maybe that was Coming Home for Christmas.
Okay.
One of them they changed because they already had a movie with that character's name in it.
Okay. Which,
So
yeah.
they changed it.
But with that movie, first of all, I will tell you, this is a compliment to you. My mom remembered that movie, which is really cool, because sometimes I'll mention a movie and I have to give her a very detailed description before she even remembers it. She remembered your movie. She remembered that one. I mean, she remembered Coming Home for Christmas. We've had the discussion with Coming Home for Christmas because she's a fan of Andrew Francis and Danica and all these people. So she remembered that one, but she really remembered this one. So that's but I remember I got to interview Jill Wagner right after she shot that film, and she was and if I remember right, that led off that particular Christmas season. Wasn't that like the first movie to like kick things off? Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure it may not have been the first one. I mean, like there might have been one on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, but it was the first Hallmark Channel one, if I remember correctly, for that year. And I remember that movie, I thought it was so perfectly well done with just the casting, the story, the pacing, everything. And then turn around and you win an award. And I remember watching the Movie Guide Awards when they rebroadcast them. And I was like, oh, look at that. This movie won. How cool is that? What was that like, finding out that your movie won this award? I mean, I know it's not but it's the movie that was based on your book.
Yes, I mean, it's like I said, I'm just all in it for the creativity, and I'm just, I didn't see it as an award for me per se, but an award for every person involved in that production, because it takes everybody to do it. My idea was the original idea, but there were so many other moving parts to get it there. Right. And so it was, it was surprising, but also just super, super exciting that I get a chance and an opportunity to be with those people, to be placed with those people who can get it to that level. And I have a funny story about Jill Wagner and Christmas Wishes. So this was like just a couple of weeks ago. I was out at this teeny tiny little bar in Tennessee, and we were watching live music. It was a songwriter was doing his he was playing his songs. And I mean, tiny little bar. And I was standing in the bathroom line because, there's like 2 little bathrooms in this bar. So there was a little line of ladies waiting, as always. And I was standing next to this girl, and I looked at her, and and I'm one of those people that's clueless and never notices anybody or recognizes anybody. But I kept looking at her, and finally I said, "Is your name Jill?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "You are not going to believe this, but I wrote Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses." And she was like, "What?" And so here we are, the 2 Christmas Wishes girls standing in the bathroom line at this tiny little bar. And we had this long talk about, because she was like, "I hope I did okay. Did I do it? Did I do okay?" I was like, "Yes, absolutely." It was amazing. So it was pretty crazy that the 2 of us would be side by side talking about Christmas Wishes in the middle of a bar bathroom line. And, she was like, "Oh, go. It's your turn. Go to the bathroom and then we'll come back and talk." So, and then we just had a little chat. It was so good. So it was really nice to meet her and see her.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my goodness. That is serendipitous for sure.
It certainly is.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Jill is amazing. to be honest, when I first met Jill in person, I almost didn't recognize her, just because without, I mean, she's gorgeous, not that she's not, but without all of the makeup and all the, all the stuff, just she looks just like the typical Southern beauty, she doesn't come into a room with, I'm a movie star. She doesn't come in with that aura, I guess. And so it took me a moment, and then I was like, I kept looking. I remember I kept looking at her. It was at a bar. So yeah, I kept looking at her. Okay, that's gotta be Jill. Of course it's Jill. I know it's Jill Wagner.
That's how it was with us too. I mean, we're just two ladies standing in the bathroom line.
Yeah.
So you're not thinking that you're going to, plus, like I said, it was the tiniest bar on the planet. And so, you're not expecting that in the 5 people in the bathroom line that you're going to be standing next to someone that you're connected to. And she had a ball cap on, and so, like I said, I just kept looking at her going, gosh, and I didn't want to be like Jill Wagner and then have some random lady be like, no. So that's why I just asked, is her name Jill? I figured then I won't totally embarrass myself, because it wasn't clear. I just felt like she looked so familiar, and I thought it's because I stare at your face every time I look at my movie on TV.
Oh goodness. Now, so Jenny, I got to watch as you were developing your own publishing company, which I was absolutely blown away. All of a sudden, I started seeing that you were creating something, and I started watching as you're doing this. And I'm like, man. And if I remember correctly, this was in the middle of a pandemic when you were doing this. Exactly. And I'm thinking, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and look at what Jenny is creating. How awesome is that? And watching the whole development of, whoa, how is she, and because you kind of brought us along for the ride, you kept putting the updates out there. So why don't you tell us about how this publishing company came about?
Okay. So I'm sort of like those actresses that go on to be producers. That's my gene. That's who I am. I think it comes from my years as an educator and as an academic. My grandfather was a director of marketing, and my grandmother was an artist. And I truly believe that those genetics are strong in my blood. So as I got going in this career, I started to have real ideas about how I wanted to market my brand and my books. And I'm in love with my publishing company. And so I would tell them, I just want a seat at your table. But I was the author. And so I wasn't able to be in on those deep discussions on branding. And the more I got into it, the more I was literally bursting with ideas. And so when the pandemic hit, I had the most amazing thing happen, in that with both my kids, their soccer practice stopped, their baseball games didn't happen. Everything shut down, and I had time, just endless amounts of time, and a brain full of ideas. And I thought, if I don't do this, I'm going to explode, because that's how strong that drive was within me. And so I thought, okay, I have no idea if I know what I'm doing. I've watched enough American Idol to know that there are people with dreams that are clearly not gonna, see those dreams to fruition. So I could be a complete disaster. And I told my publishing company that too. I said, if I fail at this, I will be quiet and I will never say a word, but I've got to try it. So I took that time and I wrote an extra book, which I never do. I write 2 a year, and that year I wrote 3. And it nearly killed me to write 3, but I did it. And I thought, I'm going to try to publish this book and see if I know what I'm doing first, because then if I fail, it's just my book. It's no one else's. And I put it out there, and it soared. It soared like crazy. And the more it soared, the more excited I got about the process of it, and the more ideas I started to come up with. And so I thought, okay, I think I'm going to go in with both feet. Who was it? Was it Denzel Washington who said, I'd rather fall forward?
Mhm.
Don't fall back on something. I'd rather fall forward.
Mhm.
And so I opened my doors. I went through all the channels. I, have a legitimate trademark. I did all the government paperwork. I worked with a lawyer and came up with a, legal contract. I've got it all done. So I started building the program, and built and built and built and built. And then we released our first author that wasn't me just last January, and debut author, and she hit some bestseller lists on Amazon. And then my next book, Butterfly Sisters, came out, and that one is soaring as well. And I've just been inundated with ways to increase reach and ways to reach readers that haven't been done before. And so that's sort of where I am now. My creative journey has just changed and evolved as I've grown and become more comfortable in that space and in who I am as a creative. And I think that publishing is probably more in line with my personality than actually writing is. I think that writing was sort of my way in because I was an academic and I thought writing is an academic way to be creative. But now I'm more into, I'm absolutely into writing as well. I still write, but I'm more into how to reach people and how to produce brands and packaging, and how to get more books into the hands of readers. My favorite thing is when someone says, I wasn't a reader until I read your book.
Oh.
And for me, that has all these little fingers to say, why did they pick it up? What about it made them look at it? What about the blurb made them decide to read it? And then what did I put in it that made them come back and say, I read books now because of her book? And that's sort of, it's almost like sociology backwards.
Yeah.
To see what's making these people tick and how do I reach them?
Yeah. And just listening to your story, again, it's so relatable. Jenny, what you were saying is like some of the very same things that I either regularly say or think. Just kind of like, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we've got this really strong connection. I've always, since we connected a few years ago, I've been a fan of what you're doing, but now I'm starting to think, man, she and I have a lot in common, because this whole thing of thinking outside the box. You haven't had all the classes and all the training. You don't have the traditional stuff that people might think, well, if you're going to have a company, you need to do A, B, and C, but you're looking at reaching people in new ways. And then you're saying, why did they like this? And you're thinking outside the box, which absolutely resonates with me, because that's the way I live my life, just about, as I'm always about. And you were doing that as an educator too. You were thinking outside the box. You were looking at the manual and saying, well, that doesn't work for my class, so I'm going to do it this way. And that just, it's so great to see your success by following what you're passionate about, taking those risks, because I'm sure that people probably thought, oh, Jenny's doing this. Jenny doesn't have the training to do this. What I don't know if you had people who were trying to oppose you as you were starting this company. I don't know if that was that something that you ran into, as people being negative or saying you shouldn't do it? Did you get a lot of that?
No, I think where it started was when I first said, I'm going to write a book, that I've written a book. I could see it in their eyes, that sort of, you're not an author, you're a teacher. Or like that in the South, it's that bless your heart, bless your heart, bless your heart, you write a book. It was that. And I could see it. I'm really in tune to people and their emotions, and I could tell. And I don't know what it was about me because I was very anxious and nervous when I first began the journey. But I didn't let it deter me. It almost set a fire under me to prove them wrong, to say, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. And I repeat that all the time. Just do it anyway. But I'm not a writer. We'll do it anyway. Well, I've never been published. We'll do it anyway. Like, just do it, because the worst that can happen is somebody can say no. That's the worst that can happen, you know? And it's calculated risks. Again, I opened a publishing imprint having never worked in publishing, but I also feel like, having grown up in publishing as an author, and then, like you said, thinking outside the box, I think sometimes I can bring to the table things that aren't on the table now, and work with what's already there, but take it up a notch. And I think that's sort of my goal in everything I do, is I always have one more step. And I think was it Matthew McConaughey who said, who's your hero? And he said, my hero is me in 10 years. And then when you get to 10 years, who's your hero? Well, my hero is me in 10 years. And I think that's sort of how I live my life. Is I'm never say, oh, I've arrived, or, oh, this is what I've achieved, because it's not good enough. There's something else for me. There's some other way to reach people, or some other way to explore myself and my creativity. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But I think that's why I can move through it the way that I do.
Right. Wow. Well, Jenny, you and I are definitely kindred spirits. I mean, I'm feeling like I am just kind of blown away at how similar our philosophies are.
It's creative gene, it's that creative gene.
Yeah.
We just think differently,
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's just a very unique way of viewing the world.
Yeah. I would
that, I think, and not that non-creatives don't, because I'm married to a non-creative.
Okay.
I am married to one. So I get it. They just view things in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it takes both of those together to really hit the mark. I think I needed to be raised as an academic so that I could hone in, throw a net on this crazy creativity that I have and give it form. You need both to make it happen.
All right. Yeah. Oh, well, I know that we have people who would like to ask questions. I have no doubt. I know Paula has some questions. Let me just bring Paula on. I don't even need to ask, because I know that she has questions. And there you go.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to start right where you are talking about publishing, because I'm green. I have no idea, but you say you're a publisher. Are you getting manuscripts? Are you actually sitting down and reading them, or do you have people that work for you that are doing this part?
Well, we've just opened our doors. I mean, we've only been open about a year. So I'm working it as a startup. So my goal is to eventually have a full staff. Currently, what I do is I read the submissions that come to us. And then the ones that I think that I have to read it and say, I know exactly how to market this book. It's less to do with, this is a good story. I think it has to be a good story, but then there are lots of good stories that I might let go because I don't feel that I'm the best person to market it. But if I look at it and I say, I know exactly how to put a cover on this, I know how to write this, a retail description, I know exactly how to make this fly, then I give it to one of my editors and she reads it to make sure, because again, like I was saying, it's that you have to have both sides of this. So I'm this sort of new eyes on it. I tell her what I think about it and why I think it's marketable. And then she reads it and gives me a yes or no as to why. She'll say, I think this is good because, or I think this is going to need this. And then we decide how we want to move forward. If it's such a massive amount of work to get it there, I have to really think about it, especially as I grow. I have less and less time to roll up my sleeves and dig into it with the author. Usually I need the author to be able to take care of it and make changes if we do. And I'm there, obviously, if they have any questions, but that's sort of where we are at this point. And then eventually I hope to move to a place where I have an editor who reads submissions, decides, once they know our brand, because it's my publishing imprint is Harpeth Road Press. Mm-hmm. And that's Harpeth. It's named after a river, the Harpeth River that runs through Nashville. Okay. Because my goal was to take a twisty, windy, crazy path that's like the Harpeth River and make it a road. Let's make it straight for people so that they know how to navigate this crazy thing called publishing. So Harpeth Road Press, my website is www.harpethroad.com. And there's a submission page for either agented or non-agented authors.
I was going to ask you how it was named, so that you already answered that question. All right, but I'm still a little bit confused. So now that you've read the book, or if you had someone read the book and you've gone over with the author or whatever, what do you do next with that? You're not in your basement printing it out.
Definitely not. So the book, once we would go to contract, we would offer a contract to that person, and we would say, we want to publish your book. I usually give a contract, and then I offer sort of an overview of the branding that I'm thinking of for the book, so that you could see where I'm planning to take your book. And then also we've added in a new section where I give you a rundown of what to expect. Here's what you're going to be looking at. And it's not as simple as I write this book and it gets a cover on it. There are about 3 to 4 intensive edits that happen once you sign on the line and say, I want my book to go to stores. The first edit is a developmental or a structural edit where the editor will go in and you might have a totally different story when you finish. She might go in and say, I think that instead of her going to the marketplace here, she needs to go to the library, and it all has to go down at the library. And you have to rewrite that whole scene. Or she might say, the ending has to be completely rewritten. We need to talk about how to get it there so that it's a satisfying ending for your readers. And you might have to totally rewrite that based on her suggestions. And then once we have the story sort of in place, is ready to go, we'll do a line edit, which is where we go in and just say, you've got 2 of the same word in 2 lines. Let's fix one. Let's find a more concise way to say this. Let's strip out this exposition that you've got. We sort of tidy it up. And once that's done, then we go to copy edit, which is where another editor will go in and put in all your punctuation that you're missing, all your commas, all your periods. They'll check with any words that need still more repeated words, things like that, any little things. And then after that, it goes to proofread. And that's the final look to say, okay, is it ready? Once we get that, we send it to our typesetter, who then puts it into book form, and you'll have one more look at it to make sure that it's ready to go. It's exactly the way you want it. And once we get it to that point, then we take over and start packaging. And in the midst of that, you get to see your cover, and we talk about how we're going to work your blurb and your retail description online and all of that good stuff.
I thank you for that, because I just go to a grocery store or to a bookstore and buy a book, and you think that's it. How did they do it? Why can't I do it? That's really, thank you so much for explaining that.
Yes, and I didn't know that either. I didn't know that either when I started. I was like, I don't have a clue what's going on. And another thing that Harpeth Road does that's slightly different than most publishers is, because of my education background, I've written lessons for the authors on every single step of the way. So when you get your contract, you also get a what to expect letter. When you get your first edit, you get a lesson on how this edit is going to work and what you have to do. And then you get a lesson on every single thing, down to how to run your Twitter handles, what to put on Facebook, how to design your website, what your headshots should look like, how do you make your bio, all of the things that you're going to need as a persona. Because once you publish your book, you become this public person. And that has to be online. I mean, think about Debbie McComber. Go look at, my website. You'll see I'm everywhere, right? And so all of that plays in as well. And so we'll sort of give you those pieces to make it a lot easier so that you're not scrambling around trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing.
Good for you. I mean, that's really great. It's okay. Now to your books. Is there one book that you've written so far, because you have many there, that you would like to see that hasn't been yet made into a movie?
Yes. So whenever anybody asks me what my favorite book is, I always say it's my most recent, because it shows my most recent level of learning as a writer. But this one is Butterfly Sisters.
Okay.
Hold it up close. Butterfly Sisters. This one was very much who I am. The sisters are the two sides of me, the academic and the creative. And it was sort of a way for me as a person to sort of come to terms with how I needed both sides of who I am. I needed both sides to be who I really am. And so this idea came to me for the Butterfly Sisters, because I thought, what if we had these two sisters that didn't understand each other, but they need each other? They need the struggle, just like a butterfly. They need the struggle to find their wings. And so that's how that came about. And I would love to see that played out on screen. I think it would just be so cool to see that.
I'm going to go buy the book and read it now.
You like it.
Then do you ever get asked, like when they were doing the Coming Christmas or whatever, if they're going to change it, do they ask you, or once you sell them that format or plot or whatever, it's theirs? Do you get?
They buy it from you. They buy it from you, so it belongs to them.
Okay.
And again, I've just never been the type to have it matter to me. I know that there are authors that are very territorial about their words and about their story. But for me, like I said, it was just more fun to see, what do they do with it?
Yeah.
It belongs to them. I can't write those characters anymore. They belong to Hallmark.
Yeah.
But I don't mind. One, because I have enough junk in my head to come up with another. I don't need those characters. I'll come up with something else.
Well, that was my next question. My next question was, where does the junk come from? Where do you get your inspiration from? I mean, what do you always have that next book in mind going, or do you have to look for something special to bring it forth?
I have to look for something. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to write until right before I write it. And I get ideas from so many different places, but I think one thing that I wish I could convey, if I could convey to new authors, one thing: don't be so stressed about being territorial about your book, because once you get to book 22, 22 of them. And so your first one, I remember just being so, not really territorial, because that's not really how I am, but I wanted everything to just be perfect and exactly the way I wanted it. You know what I mean? Whereas I think once you get to book 22, you can relax a little bit more, because you're going to come up with another one, and then another one, and then another one. And for me, the stress now comes from, do I have something to write about when I need it? When I need to sit down and write, do I have that story in my head? And I mean, just since Butterfly Sisters came out in this February, I've already written and edited a summer book, and I'm writing a Christmas book. So it's so fast, it's so fast. So I think that's, if I could give any advice, it would be to just relax into it. You'll come up with more ideas.
Yeah.
And they'll just come to you. I mean, from anywhere.
Do you have a special place that you like to go to write? I mean, like a certain corner or a certain chair, or just out in the yard, or do you have a special place that you feel it just come out?
Usually, if I'm at home, this is my office where I'm sitting now, and this is where I usually do my work. But I do my best work when I'm at a coffee shop, because it's almost like having that fan going when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Nobody needs me. my kids don't need Cheetos. The dishwasher's not sitting there full. You know, I don't have laundry in the laundry room. There's nothing pulling me anywhere, but I have that energy of people around me just buzzing all the time. And that's where I like to work. Some people like a more quiet atmosphere, but I'm an extrovert. So I think that's part of it. I want to be around energy. I just don't need them. I just don't want them to need me.
Yeah.
I don't need anybody to talk to me, because what'll happen is sometimes I'll go to a coffee shop and a friend of mine will be there. And then it's very difficult for me to write because I've got a friend there. I'd rather talk than write. But if I'm there by myself, that's where I like to go, somewhere public.
Yeah. You said you had 2 sons. How old are they? Are they young?
12.
Oh, 15 and 12. Oh, I like that age.
16 and 13. I'm in the driving everyone around phase.
Okay. Pretty soon they'll be driving you around.
I've got one who's learning, and we share drives.
Well, my last question is, family time is very important to me. And on Sundays, we play cards and we share a meal. Mm-hmm. And my kids are 40 and, and, almost 50 and yes. But when they come in town, one's in town, we always share a meal together on Sundays. And what is your family tradition or special memories? Because my boys to this day say, remember, Mom, when we did this? Remember when we did this? Do you have something special you do with the kids?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a former elementary school teacher, so, there's all kinds of things. One of the things that came to mind just now when you asked is, and it actually did, I've always done things around Christmas or holidays. We always we decorate a gingerbread house together. We always bake cookies. We, since they were little, standing on the chair, we've baked cookies together. And now even when they're like, "Hey, Mom," they come in and like, "Make cookies," and they'll do it. They still decorate houses for the gingerbread houses for me too. But starting with the pandemic, when we were in our house all the time, we needed something to break up the monotony of it. And so we started to do, and we've kept doing it because it was just so much fun. Anytime there's like New Year's or the Super Bowl or anything like that, I'll create these massive family game nights where, one of them was we had to all take straws and blow a plastic cup so you could blow it off the end of the counter first. And there are all these little games that we play, and I'll go all out and buy prizes and I wrap them all up, and the winner gets to pick. I make sure each of the boys gets a prize. So the winner gets to pick their prize, and then they have to pick the other person's prize for that game.
Nice.
You only get to pick your prize if you win, but everybody gets a prize. And so we'll do 3 or 4 of those. We'll do the cornhole tournaments with the bean bags, trying to throw them in, and lots of. I did one on the Super Bowl that was like a commercial bingo. So like if Coca-Cola was up, you could mark your Coca-Cola spot off. And so we've started to do that in 2020 and just haven't stopped. We do it anytime we can now.
I love cooking with my sons and grandsons. My grandson's in college. He's 20 years old now. And he called me last night, "Grandma, I know you said 111," and he was making a roux and he wanted it in he couldn't remember. And so now how do I turn it in Alfredo? And it was so wonderful to have a 20-year-old kid call you and say, how you taught me how to remind me. And that, so I'm glad you're making family memories because they'll carry them forever with them.
Yes. And there's lots more I could go on.
Yeah.
With all the time. We don't have enough time, but I think that's so important. And like I said, as an elementary school teacher, that's just, it comes naturally. We just do it. We're always coming up with different little games and things to do.
Well, I thank you so much for answering my questions.
Yeah, thanks. They were awesome.
Yeah, you can see why Paula, she should just kind of like, I'm always saying she's like my unofficial co-host, really, because she just has the best questions, and I'm glad you explained all that because I would never have thought about that was
good.
Yeah, it was really good. It's really good. Well, I think that we have covered so much. Jenny, I just want to thank you so much. You have been a joy and delight to have. Thank you to my virtual audience. Getting to meet you this summer was fun, but now I feel like man, the next time I see you, like we got to spend some more quality time together. Definitely. And so as we wrap things up, if any of you want to, unmute and,
thank
Jenny, you can do that.
And I look forward to reading your book.
Yeah.
Your butterfly.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Weekend's coming up. So thank you. And I'll talk to you guys soon. I'm sure. Okay. All right.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm glad it was a good experience.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, what did I tell you? Isn't Jenny just fabulous? And the really cool thing is, we didn't get to talk about it because this interview is a little bit dated, but she has a new Christmas book out. So make sure to look at the notes for this podcast for all the updated information. I am so thrilled to finally bring this interview to you. It thrills my soul to be able to share creative people with you that maybe you're not aware of. Maybe you are aware of it, but now you get to know them just a little bit better. We are doing a whole lot better. There are more podcasts that are getting scheduled more regularly. And on to the new year, you're going to see the uptick happen. I want to thank all of you for being an incredible support as I've been finding my life anew in this time of transition. God bless all of you. If you are listening now and you like what you hear, please subscribe to Media from the Heart on Apple Podcasts, rate and review. And then if you're on YouTube, if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe, I would so appreciate it. Please join the Facebook group because we do have more podcast episodes coming up. So I'd love to have more people in that virtual audience. Let's really build this up. You guys are the reason this podcast is so successful. And my guests always have an amazing time. So thank you again to Jenny. Thank you to my amazing supportive team, my virtual audience, and those of you who listen when you can. Thank you. Today, I just pray God's blessing over all of you. And here is to seeing you in a future episode of Media from the Heart. Take care.